When installing a subpanel, it's vital to understand the correct grounding and neutral bonding procedures. The primary directive is to isolate the neutral bar from the ground bar within the subpanel enclosure. Do not connect them together. Think of the neutral conductor as carrying the normal return current, while the grounding conductor is there only for safety to provide a low impedance path back to the source in case of a fault. This separation is key to preventing unwanted current flow on the grounding conductors. Now, to correctly bond the ground bar, you'll typically use a ground screw or a bonding jumper. This establishes a direct electrical connection between the ground bar and the metal enclosure of the subpanel. This connection ensures that the enclosure is at the same ground potential as the grounding conductors. This is very important for safety as it helps to minimize the risk of electric shock. Here is a step-by-step process. Firstly, identify the neutral bar and the ground bar inside the subpanel. The neutral bar will usually be insulated from the metal enclosure, while the ground bar will be directly mounted to it. Secondly, ensure that there is no connection between the neutral bar and the subpanel enclosure. Remove any bonding jumpers or screws that might be connecting them. Thirdly, connect all the grounding conductors from the branch circuits to the ground bar. These grounding conductors are typically bare copper or green insulated wires. Fourthly, use a listed grounding screw or bonding jumper to connect the ground bar to the subpanel enclosure. This creates the required bond between the grounding system and the enclosure. It's crucial to consult the National Electrical Code, specifically Article 250, for detailed requirements on grounding and bonding. The NEC provides specific guidelines on conductor sizing, acceptable grounding methods, and bonding techniques. This is essential to ensure compliance and safety. Remember, the purpose of the grounding system is to provide a low impedance path for fault current to return to the source. This low impedance path allows overcurrent protection devices, such as circuit breakers or fuses, to quickly trip and energize the circuit in the event of a fault. This reduces the risk of electrical shock and fire. An incorrectly grounded subpanel can create several hazards. For instance, if the neutral and ground are bonded to the subpanel, it can create parallel paths for neutral current to flow on the grounding conductors. This can cause nuisance tripping of circuit breakers, create electromagnetic interference, and increase the risk of electric shock. Moreover, a poorly grounded subpanel can compromise the effectiveness of surge protection devices. Surge protectors rely on a low impedance ground connection to divert surge current safely to ground. Without a proper ground, the surge protector may not function correctly, and equipment may be damaged. Some key things to remember are 1. Always disconnect power before working on any electrical equipment. 2. Use properly rated tools and equipment. 3. Follow the NEC guidelines and local electrical codes. 4. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, hire a qualified electrician. Grounding and bonding are critical aspects of electrical safety. Understanding the principles and following the correct procedures is essential for protecting people and property from electrical hazards. The NEC is the primary standard for electrical installations in the United States. It provides comprehensive guidelines on all aspects of electrical wiring, including grounding and bonding. Familiarizing yourself with the relevant sections of the NEC is crucial for ensuring compliance and safety. Article 250 of the NEC covers grounding and bonding requirements. It details the different types of grounding systems, conductor sizing, bonding methods, and equipment grounding requirements. Other relevant articles include Article 300 on wiring methods, Article 310 on conductors for general wiring, and Article 408 on switchboards and panel boards. These articles provide additional guidance on specific aspects of electrical installations. Proper grounding and bonding are not just about safety, they also improve the reliability and performance of electrical systems. A well-grounded system minimizes voltage fluctuations, reduces electromagnetic interference, and improves the overall quality of power. This can lead to more efficient operation of electrical equipment and reduce the risk of equipment failure. In addition to the NEC, there are other standards and guidelines that may be relevant to electrical installations. These include standards from organizations such as the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, Underwriters Laboratories, and the National Fire Protection Association. These standards provide additional information on specific types of equipment, testing procedures, and installation practices. It's important to stay up to date on the latest codes and standards, as they are constantly evolving to reflect new technologies and best practices. Regularly reviewing the NEC and other relevant publications can help you stay informed and ensure that your electrical installations are safe and compliant. When inspecting a subpanel installation, there are several key things to look for. Firstly, verify that the neutral bar is isolated from the enclosure. Check for any bonding jumpers or screws that might be connecting them. Secondly, ensure that the ground bar is properly bonded to the enclosure. Check that the grounding screw or bonding jumper is securely connected. Thirdly, inspect the grounding conductors to ensure they are properly sized and connected. Refer to the NEC tables for conductor sizing requirements. Fourthly, verify that all connections are tight and secure. Loose connections can create resistance and lead to overheating. Finally, use a multimeter to test the ground impedance. A low impedance reading indicates a good ground connection. If you find any issues during the inspection, correct them immediately to ensure the safety and reliability of the electrical system. Consider an example scenario to solidify your understanding. Suppose you are installing a subpanel in a detached garage to supply power to lighting and receptacles. This subpanel is fed from the main panel in the house via a 4-wire feeder consisting of 2 hot wires, a neutral wire, and a grounding wire. At the subpanel, you would isolate the neutral bar from the enclosure and connect the neutral wire to the neutral bar. You would then connect the grounding wire to the ground bar, which is bonded to the enclosure. All the grounding conductors from the branch circuits in the garage would also be connected to the ground bar. This configuration ensures that the neutral current returns to the main panel via the neutral wire, while the grounding conductors provide a low impedance path for fault current. Another common mistake to avoid is using the wrong type of grounding conductor. The NEC specifies the types of grounding conductors that are permitted for different applications. Typically, bare copper, green insulated copper, or aluminum conductors are used for grounding. Using the wrong type of conductor can compromise the effectiveness of the grounding system. Also, be sure to use the correct size of grounding conductor. The NEC provides tables that specify the minimum size of grounding conductor based on the size of the overcurrent protection device. Using an undersized grounding conductor can limit its ability to carry fault current and increase the risk of electrical shock. Always double-check your connections and ensure they are properly tightened. Loose connections can create resistance and lead to overheating, which can cause fires. Use a torque screwdriver or a wrench to tighten connections to the manufacturer's specifications. Finally, always test your work to verify that the grounding system is functioning correctly. Use a multimeter to measure the ground impedance and ensure that it is within acceptable limits. If you are not sure how to perform these tests, consult a qualified electrician. Understanding the purpose of each component in a grounding system is critical to correctly installing a subpanel. The grounding electrode conductor, also known as the GEC, connects the grounding system to a grounding electrode, such as a ground rod, ground plate, or metal water pipe. The GEC provides a path for fault current to return to the source via the earth. The equipment grounding conductor, also known as the EGC, connects the metal enclosures of electrical equipment to the grounding system. The EGC provides a low impedance path for fault current to return to the source via the grounding conductors. The bonding jumper connects different parts of the grounding system together to ensure that they are at the same ground potential. Bonding jumpers are used to connect metal enclosures, metal raceways, and other metal components to the grounding system. The neutral conductor carries the normal return current from electrical loads back to the source. In a properly grounded system, the neutral conductor is isolated from the grounding conductors of the subpanel. This prevents neutral current from flowing on the grounding conductors. If the neutral and ground are not properly separated, it can lead to a variety of problems, including nuisance tripping of circuit breakers, electromagnetic interference, and increased risk of electrical shock. Therefore, It is essential to follow the NEC guidelines and ensure that the neutral and ground are properly isolated at the subpanel. Another aspect of subpanel installation is overcurrent protection. The subpanel must be protected by an overcurrent protection device, such as a circuit breaker or fuse that is properly sized for the feeder conductors. The overcurrent protection device protects the feeder conductors from overload and short circuit conditions. The size of the overcurrent protection device is determined by the ampacity of the feeder conductors. The NEC provides tables that specify the ampacity of conductors based on their size and insulation type. It is important to select an overcurrent protection device that is properly sized for the feeder conductors to ensure that the conductors are protected from damage. If the overcurrent protection device is too large, it will not provide adequate protection for the conductors. If the overcurrent protection device is too small, it will trip unnecessarily. In addition to the overcurrent protection device, the subpanel must also be properly labeled. The label must indicate the voltage, amperage, and number of circuits that the subpanel is designed for. The label must also indicate the location of the main panel that supplies power to the subpanel. The labeling requirements are specified in the NEC. Proper labeling is important for safety and convenience. It allows electricians and other qualified personnel to quickly identify the subpanel and its characteristics. This can be helpful when troubleshooting electrical problems or performing maintenance. It also prevents accidental overload or short-circuit conditions. Remember to follow the manufacturer's instructions when installing a subpanel. The manufacturer's instructions provide detailed information on the specific model of subpanel that you are installing. The instructions may include information on wiring diagrams, mounting procedures, and grounding requirements. Following the manufacturer's instructions is important for ensuring that the subpanel is installed correctly and safely. Ignoring the manufacturer's instructions can lead to problems such as incorrect wiring, loose connections, and improper grounding. This can compromise the safety and reliability of the electrical system. Furthermore, the manufacturer's instructions may specify certain installation requirements that are not covered in the NEC. These requirements are specific to the particular model of subpanel and must be followed to ensure proper operation. When selecting a location for a subpanel, there are several factors to consider. The subpanel should be located in a dry, accessible location. It should not be installed in a damp or wet location, such as a bathroom or laundry room. The subpanel should also be located in an area that is easily accessible for maintenance and repairs. Avoid installing the subpanel in a location that is difficult to reach or that is obstructed by other equipment. The subpanel should also be located in an area that is well ventilated. This will help to prevent the subpanel from overheating. Overheating can damage the components of the subpanel and reduce its lifespan. Furthermore, the subpanel should be located in an area that is free from dust and debris. Dust and debris can accumulate inside the subpanel and interfere with its operation. This can lead to problems such as short circuits and overheating. Keep the work area clean and organized when installing a subpanel. This will help to prevent accidents and ensure that the installation is done correctly. Use a vacuum cleaner or broom to remove any dust or debris from the work area. Keep tools and materials organized to avoid tripping hazards. Wear appropriate safety gear, such as safety glasses and gloves, when working with electrical equipment. Be careful not to touch any live wires. Disconnect the power before working on any electrical equipment. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, hire a qualified electrician. Consider the impact of electromagnetic interference or EMI. Electromagnetic interference can disrupt the operation of sensitive electronic equipment. Sources of EMI include fluorescent lights, computers, and other electronic devices. To minimize the impact of EMI, the subpanel should be located away from sources of EMI. Shielded cables can be used to reduce the amount of EMI that is radiated from the subpanel. Furthermore, the subpanel should be properly grounded to provide a low impedance path for EMI current to return to the source. EMI filters can be installed to reduce the amount of EMI that is conducted on the power lines. These filters block high-frequency noise from entering the subpanel. Remember that electrical work can be dangerous. Always take precautions to protect yourself from electrical shock. Disconnect the power before working on any electrical equipment. Wear appropriate safety gear such as safety glasses and gloves. Use properly rated tools and equipment. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, hire a qualified electrician. The cost of installing a subpanel can vary depending on several factors, including the size of the subpanel, the distance from the main panel, and the complexity of the wiring. It is important to get several quotes from qualified electricians before starting the project. This will help you to compare prices and find the best value. The cost of materials will also vary depending on the type of subpanel and the quality of the components. It is important to choose high-quality materials to ensure the safety and reliability of the electrical system. Remember that it is always better to err on the side of caution when it comes to electrical work. If you are not sure about something, consult a qualified electrician. A mistake in electrical work can have serious consequences, including electrical shock, fire, and property damage. The effort and cost of hiring a qualified electrician is well worth it to ensure the safety and reliability of your electrical system. In summary, correctly isolating the neutral bar from the ground bar and properly bonding the ground bar to the subpanel enclosure is crucial for electrical safety and proper functioning of the electrical system. Always consult the NEC and follow manufacturer's instructions for specific requirements and best practices. If you are not comfortable performing this work yourself, hire a qualified electrician.